video, we had looked at the F2B shirts, and the same day we saw Rich Peabody's design, I guess it is, I don't know, not sure. I looked at the way these came in. These came from the AMA. These are for our club. And what my motive was, I wanted to take a few of these to the World Championships and have all the guys sign them, all the people from overseas, people we're going to see, maybe the only time we're going to see them, who knows. And on the back, we've got our own logo. Ricky Rojet's logo, the Rojet Stunt Engines, Rodak Manufacturing. Our other club, the Garden State Circle Burners, and Warren Walker's club, the Knights of the Round Circle. So if we can get a couple of these shirts, or several of them signed by the people at the Worlds, this will be really cool. And I'm really obviously looking forward to going to the Worlds, but the job John Pathia did, outstanding. I think they're really in a class by themselves. And if any of the subscribers would like one of these shirts, well, contact me. We'll talk about it. We'll trade for a pizza. Anyway, they really do look nice. John Pathia really did some super job on these. And as we finished up the silver on the last tape, and that last tape has a lot of good tips on sanding silver, tissuing. I think that's going to be just about as good as we need to get that to move on to the next step on the project. And of course, having this guy in-house just helps inspire me every morning, just like a cup of coffee. And in today's mail, we got some pictures from Ken Claps in here. This, of course, is his rendition of the 40 Tsunami. This is Evolution 40, a Cardinal Evolution from Elliott Scott Plans. You might remember from a while back his Pond Racer. 2 4-strokes. And his Typhoon. From Ken Clapson, our friend in Canada. Yeah, so here's the deal. Mike and I put a door in my rental property today. We get done in record time. We run up here with the plane, and look who's out. Is that Brian flying? Who's flying? Somebody's up here. But boy, the field is a mess. What a mud hole. Ah. I don't think we'll be flying our good plane today. And Peabody got stuck in a mud that had to have his car towed out, so I think I'll leave the Windstar right here. Anyway, this is the first time we've been up here in, God almighty, in so long. It's just good to get out of the house. We all have cabin fever. Listen, the deal, Karen told me we got back from the door job, and she said Peabody's stuck in the mud, so I said to the hell with him, let's go to lunch. If I knew it was you, he would have came right up.
No, it was me.
If it was you, why didn't you tell her it was you?
I pulled the nose first, and I pulled in there.
Sunk in?
The front end just went right down in the ditch, couldn't get out.
Well, I don't have a cell phone, so the field's not that bad. You could make it out to the handle. I've flown in worse than this. I've flown in worse than this. You guys are just not serious flyers. That's the whole problem. That good ARF day. I see a lot of ARFs in my future. This tells you who's the tough guy. Nobody brings their good plane out, and the Brodak Cardinal's out on a line, right? Flight after flight. What does that tell you? How was it before? Was it good this morning, Roy?
No, not as good.
It's still crappy? Hey, the plane's blowing away, Wes.
I'm here to pull people out of the boat. You ain't the only one that got this.
Yeah, Karen says Peabody's stuck in the mud, and Mike says, I'm hungry for pizza. Let's go get something to eat. I said, I got no time for this muddy stuff. Where's Peabody when I need him? Brian, do you remember when Mike got stuck in a mud in my house?
Well, that's it. I get the call.
Yeah. You can tell who your friends are when you're stuck in a mud at the club field.
What a mess. What are you guys wasting time here for? What am I here for?
So we leave the wonderful circle burner field. Look at this, look at this. What a mess. Stunt flying and the great East Coast. These guys could keep it. I'm going to go home and run my trains. Forget this. As disappointing of a day as yesterday was at the club field, I wake up this morning, and it looks reasonable anyway, not great, but some of the guys are going up to the new field in Palisade Park it's across the river, it's actually in Richfield Park, and I've never shown the new field on video, so we're going to go up there, meet them, probably get a couple of flights in, but like yesterday, it doesn't look too promising. As you can imagine, this time of year everybody has cabin fever. Everybody just wants to get out of the house, including myself. And we have had a very, very long, cold garden. Boy, we've got our work cut out for us to straighten this garden out this year. Even our little birdhouses look like they need a refinished job. But in the circle of life, winter around here always leads to a very, very nice spring, and I hope a month from now we're going to be working in our garden regularly. And boy, the poor little birds, they have had a rough winter, as we all have, with ice and snow, and sometimes it's just good just to get out of the house, and that's one of the good things about model aviation, just getting with your friends, having some coffee or pizza or whatever. Sometimes it makes a tough winter go by quicker. Now, I always laugh about the tree-lined streets of Rutherford, where the leafless tree-lined streets, but spring is coming, I hope. And it won't be long before we have the beautiful apple blossoms and cherry blossoms, but right now, pretty barren. Because we've never shown, I think we did show when we were marking out the circles here. We're on the end of Challenger Boulevard, and the county, thanks to Rich Jacobone, has given us this field. It's actually the end where this road is going to end, about a mile down. Now, it's pretty funny that this field actually doesn't look too bad right now. Some of the other guys that are already here, they put up a little barrier. But I can see, because we have soccer players over there, we're going to have a problem if we don't get a fence. They're supposed to put a fence up in the spring. I see Brian's already getting flying in.
I got a nice rubber mat, big black.
Yeah.
Just laying.
No, this.
That's what I brought, because I didn't know what we were going to see down here anyway.
Yeah, well, this is the first time. Now, Rich is sweeping off an area, but we're gonna get yard blowers out here and do this. The problem is we've lost the Middlesex field permanently. That's gone. It's already torn up. The odds are real good we're not going to get it back. Our Palisade Park site is in limbo, maybe for another year. We may get that back, may not. But at this site, now I'm looking, and there's one bump here. There's kind of a bump you'd want to avoid. But we'll make a takeoff spot. We'll put the holes in for the Stooges right here. And I'm thinking...
down that way more, Win.
Yeah, well, I want to see a plane take off. Or right after it rains, see where there's no puddles. That's what you want to see.
Right.
Before Brian you're going to put the spikes in?
Yeah, if you decide whatever you want to do.
Well, let's watch a plane take off.
Fly. I'm going to fly. You guys...
You need like... Oh, you got a big mat.
Here's my runway.
All right, so what's wrong with that?
It should be good. It's unvulcanized rubber. I've had it for years, and it hasn't gotten any worse than that.
Okay, so what's wrong with that?
Oh, problem.
Oh, I can see we're going to have a problem with... But that won't be a problem when we have a fence.
There won't be a problem when he won't come get it.
You may think, well, what's the big deal with not having a flying field? Other places in the world, I know in California, they have beautiful places I've seen. But they roll this. This is kind of bumpy to land in. But I'm guessing we have at least maybe 5/8 of the circle that's fine. And we're certainly going to spend some time and money and energy working on this. But again, both Rich Peabody and Rich Jacobone have done extensive politicizing to get us this site. Aside from the fact the ball flies in here once in a while, they're going to put a fence up on this side, and we're going to put a fence up. We're going to get a fence on this side, and once we do, once we establish that this is our place, I think most of the people that are here, there'll be plenty of places to park the car, and we're going to make a takeoff area, sink some bolts in for the stooge. Now see how there's a hump here, so I'm trying to look for, as he takes off, if there's a smooth spot. You never want to be on the top where you're going downhill for the takeoff. So that's one of our goals to do here today, and he's playing. One of the speed flyers showed up today to check out the area, because he's from the Middlesex Club, and they basically don't have a field now. So, and I have a feeling the reality is that during the week this place will be empty. We'll be flying a bomber here. It certainly looks good enough to fly the bomber to me. And of course to fly the new bomber. Anyway, that's our new field. I'll tell you. Now look.
That'd be okay.
Well, now put it the other way around, Rich. Listen, this is John Potty's shirt. Now, if you want to fly in our club and you come here without this shirt,
Okay.
and you don't have to wear underwear, you can use this for underwear. And you know what? If you're having an illicit affair, you got a girlfriend, you want your wife to know, you wear that shirt, you're in like Flynn.
You want an extra large?
Boy, these shirts are going like hotcakes. Yeah. Buy one, John.
I'm gonna
buy it from me. I got 10,000 of them home.
All right, I'll buy it.
Mine has my name on the back.
All right, I'll buy it.
Oh, look at the money changing hands. These crooks. You got a drug dealers.
I'll pay you when I see it.
Okay.
Finally figured out why the soccer ball keeps coming out on a flying field. What? Look at the net. They have no net. And they have a goalie that stinks and no net. So every 2 minutes the ball comes flying over here. Oh, unbelievable.
So, you know, I mean,
By the time they shrink.
Today John DeTavio was over here with a plane that I think has a lot of stunt history going for it. Now, for anybody who doesn't recognize the plane, this was originally built by Richie Tower. It was built in 1981 to go to the 1982 Nats in Lincoln, Nebraska. Now, I went with Richie to the 82 Nats, and we carried the plane with us. Of course, we didn't have video back then. The name of the plane was Good Vibrations. He already had a plane named Good Vibrations. And there's a couple of very, very interesting things. And I think this is just really, really something that was a page of stunt history that's been not well published. When Richie built this plane, we were testing OPS motors and tune pipes, and we already were making our own pipes along with several other people. But that's how far back this stuff goes. And Richie was really not happy with flying this a lot. In fact, I don't remember him flying it more than a few times, but I got to do all the test flying on all these motors. We used this plane and the plane called the Killer Bee to do all our development work. And this plane has, I'll bet I've got more flights on it than everybody else combined. Now, John DeTavio was funny. He had the plane in Texas, and it's had a little accident, and we're going to try to fix it and maybe use it for a test plane if Les is interested. You can see what happened to the body. The body, it's not a real difficult repair, not something even worth videotaping. We can do that with some fiberglass cloth. But it's kind of a unique plane, and it brings back a lot of memories because I always think of this. This plane was around, let's see, that's 81, 6 years before I ever had a video camera. So there's a lot of, I don't know, just a lot of good memories tied up in this plane. I hope John or Les or somebody's going to be able to revive it. John said he had a Super Tiger 60 in it. It flew great. It's had a million test motors in it, among them OPSs, OSs, things that Richie was reworking. But most of all, the most significant thing is it's a great memory machine, and that the week we just had with Tradition, refinishing Tradition, it might even be a plane that was worth refinishing. I'm not sure. And what's funny is this plane started out very, very light. The woodwork on it is excellent. But there's a tremendous, tremendous amount of paint. It's painted pearl white and metallics. And there's just a tremendous amount of paint on it. So it may be that this is a candidate for removing the paint. I'm not sure. John was looking to sell it, and I'm not sure if Les is interested in buying it, so we're going to pick this up at some future time. But just a lot of good memories. Just a lot of good memories tied up. And Richie Tower still has... Richie is actually shooting guns in the same organization that Les is in, the shotguns, so pretty interesting. Now every once in a while I do something that even I'm impressed how dumb I am. If you only could have seen this on video, this would be world's funniest video. This happens to be what's left of my toolbox. I was loading up the car to go flying and had put the toolbox in front of the car. And my son-in-law came over and had to move some cars, so without me realizing the toolbox was still in front, I pulled forward, destroyed the toolbox. This is what's left of Wendy's fabulous toolbox. So I carefully picked it all up. But I figured, as I always try to do in life, that I'll use this opportunity to make fun of myself anyway. I'm not sure I'll ever get any smarter because I'm kind of old already. But what I wanted to do is, let me just show this. Alan Spooner had made me this toolbox, and I was not sure I could fit enough stuff in it, so I may have to make an extension for it or whatever. But I wanted to use this, and Alan in fact asked me last week, do I ever use it? And I said, gee, now I have to use it. So I'm going to try to condense everything down to what I only need to take to the flight line in the box. Fuel, battery, prop wrench, glow plugs, line, stooge. And keep and my sunscreen in my case because I've had skin cancer. And so I want to have all of the things that I'll really need. If I can get them in this box, great. If I can't, I'll extend it. But I guess the message here is, try to make something good out of something terrible. I'm not really happy about the toolbox being busted up, but I guess there's not much I can do about it right now. It happened, and as accidents can happen, I'm cleaning out the Winstar, trying to get packed up so that it's obviously a beautiful day. But one of the things, if you look real close, remember my old toolbox? Holy mackerel. This is what's left of it. You know what this reminds me of? When I was driving over that phone that didn't work. Anyway, the good news is it looks like we're going to have 4 or 5 days of flying weather, and if I can, I'll get out to the field, but right now we have the end of a pipe production run to make, and maybe one more coat of silver. I keep saying one more coat of silver, but summer is, we're getting teased. See, what's going to happen? Before a week's out, it'll probably snow. This is the first time in 70 days, 70 days, that we've had water on the pond instead of ice. So what a crazy, crazy year this has been. Try to turn this, what amounts to be a disaster, into something I can use. I've always wanted a flight box that was small enough that you could just carry it. And obviously once you put a gallon of fuel, a stooge, paper towel, it just gets out of hand. So I'm going to try to make, instead of what really is a toolbox, a line box. It's a box you would bring to the line with just what you would need, and not all the things that if you're going to change the pipe and change the prop and everything, then that would all go in another box. And in this case, I have these plastic tubs that seem to work well for that, and they stack real nicely and everything. But just giving me an opportunity to make a line box. Anyway, this was made by Alan Spooner, and we really thank him for it. It's a great little piece of equipment. In between me driving over my toolbox here, and I finally got, Les is going to bring me a piece of wood to extend it for the fuel jug, but that looks like it'll be okay. Give me the scoop on this now.
Well, this is the one that was, they originally announced it, and they never ever had them in stock.
Okay.
Well, I get on Stuka Stunt the other day, I'm just looking around, and they say they finally got them in stock.
Yeah.
So I dial up, Tower Hobbies on the computer, and it says in stock. Oh. I said, why wait till they're out of stock?
Yeah, right.
So I ordered.
And what do they cost? $50, $100? Well, it's got the motor and everything.
$39.95.
With the motor.
With the motor. ready to fly.
Gotta be kidding me.
No. I'm not.
Take it out of the box. Let's
All
see
you
it.
need is, where do you see this? This is an engineering.
Take it out. I want to see this. $39. I may get two of them. One for Chicky and one for me. What do you think, Chicky? Should we get a half A? Half A. Get at it. Come on.
Now, this is
bird. Chicky, we're gonna go see Les's plane.
They say
Fly loops, does figure eights, fly upside down.
Yeah, I think an hourglass is.
Now, Mikey Pratt's the designer of this?
Right, exactly.
Well,
And I'll tell
Mikey
you
does
something.
nice stuff.
With the number of these the tower has sold,
Oh,
I gotta think that he has done wonders for
I'll bet those little Brodak ones are gonna sell a ton. Oh, look at this. Isn't that cute?
Now, because
That's really
because you assemble this, you're the builder of the model.
Yeah, well, that's about like some people I know. They don't seem to think that's a problem.
What?
Oh, this builder of a model nonsense. Just go flying and enjoy it and forget about it.
But anyway,
Look at this little fuselage. Oh, this is like a Mike's Train House thing.
Yeah.
If this isn't cute. Nah, you know, it'd be cool. We got to come up with a modified version, you know? A tune pipe version.
yeah, right.
A four-stroke version.
Yeah.
Kids and Millie to make an 049 four-stroke. That actually looks pretty cute. It's actually a nice little, it looks like a Midgley paint job, you know, gaudy colors.
That everybody who's flown one says this is way too light. You can put nickels in there; they fit perfectly.
Okay.
So you put enough nickels in there, you put
Yeah, and put
you get
Scotch tape.
a white
Or a decal, yeah.
dot.
Right.
All right, then you put it over top of it. So that's the wing. And here's where the wing.
And it's symmetrical. It's a nice thick airfoil. Well, for a half A, it's
Yeah,
plenty
yeah.
big. If anything, it's big.
And also, they say if you have a wing high or a wing low, you can
Warm it?
You just tweak it.
Wow.
Warm it and tweak it. But
Are we going to make a flap version of this?
we'd have to cut.
No, add flaps. What are you kidding? Make it bigger. Now let's put a pod for two engines. Twin Viper Biple.
Now this is weak.
Let's see. This is plastic, right?
Yeah, that's weak.
Christ, it's a ton, too. This is heavier than the motor.
Well,
You could make a balsa wood tail.
Exactly. But then how do you lighten the nose?
Well, yeah, they've got... Well, you fly it the way it is first. Now, let's see.
Yeah, and look how short.
Mikey Pratt's a pretty sharp guy. I mean, I don't think he'd make something that wouldn't do a loop, you know?
Oh, I agree. Oh no, I'm sure you can do everything with this that they say you can.
You know the best Mikey Pratt story? On the way to the Lincoln Nats, he hit a cow with his car
Yeah,
and didn't kill him. So his daughter took the part of the bumper that was still attached to the car,
yeah.
broke it off, and went and smacked the cow in the head with the bumper.
Here's a bell crank.
Yeah, okay.
All right.
Very cool. Well, we'll get a windy bell crank in there right away.
Yeah, right.
And get some Tom Morris ball licks, a Randy PA-51. We'll juice this thing up.
But the fuse comes apart. I read the instructions.
You see what it is? This is the future of the event, is things you don't have to deal with.
This
No, I know.
comes out around 10 ounces all told.
Russ, I'm telling you, the pre-built planes are the wave of the future. It's where this event is going, whether you like it or not.
One thing, I see putting this together.
Put some duct tape around it.
Not duct tape, just clear tape.
Yeah, clear tape, yeah.
Yeah.
Just to keep it as a
Just to
safety
keep
thing.
it, rigid.
Sure.
But it comes apart with 4 screws. The fuse comes off. You take the bell crank out. You hook up. I can't believe the weight of this.
This is the only part that I think is marginal, is this. See, this.
Well-
But if this comes out that you need nose weight, we'll make a balsa wood tail. And this doesn't look so cool. Oh, this hooks in a little trough.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's not a problem.
Yeah, but still, you know what I would love to do here is, because your hinge line is just, well, it's a little bit aft, is I think we just put clear tape on it.
Yeah, exactly. And you ordered lines
And
from
this
Brodak today?
ain't light either.
Well, these are parts you could make in a heartbeat. This one, the thing that's good is this is good. What's cool, you could make your own wing for this. You could just take that wing and cut the middle out and make it twice as big. What is that, fuel tank?
Look at this fuel tank.
Wow. These are cool little planes.
Here's the feed.
Yeah, I see.
Okay, here's the vent and the overflow.
Let's go fly it. Snap snap this puppy together and let's go flying. It's a nice day.
We'll wait for
The only thing I'd be afraid, I'd be afraid don't put it behind my van while I have the key in my hand. I'd be afraid we'd step on it or something. All right, that's a cool little project. And you just got to get the lines and we're ready to go, right?
Yeah.
Oh, well, I got a little time here. I wanted to come up with something better than a gallon jug. See what happens if you put a gallon jug on this side of the toolbox, or something similar to this, what happens is, the thing is so lopsided, plus I never really fly a whole gallon in one shot, or that I don't want to take a break and walk back to the van. So I'm carrying around, why not carry an anvil around with you, or a spare tire or something? So I'm trying to make this a box that you go to the flight line with, instead of a box that has every glow plug, every zip tie, tune pipe, and prop that you're ever going to use. What I came up with, and I was going to try to adapt, of course these pumps adapt, you just unscrew this, and you can put any lid in here, you just cut the opening exactly the size you want. What I found is a 64-ounce bottle that I'm taking a label off now with M600, you can see the labels coming off. It's actually a woolite bottle. I'm going to clean it with some boiling water and then run some old fuel through it. But the idea of this was, when I get this done, this may be that it would balance the toolbox out a little bit. Because I just hate, realistically, I'm not carrying a gallon of fuel around with me. It's like having a car with a 100-gallon gas tank. So if I can do that today, that'll be one of the little projects, and maybe something you could think of, a good old woolite bottle. And the cap, we need to drill a hole in there for the pump. Another thing nice about woolite, it's got the little lid, so if we're going to mix 5 and 10% or we're going to mix fuel, that makes it very convenient. Now, a couple of things I found out about the woolite bottles, they seem like they're okay. We'll find out if they melt or something later on. I cleaned it with boiling water to get the label off, and that was quite a job. I let it sit in really hot water for an hour, then scraped it with a razor. That took the label off. They really are hard to get the label off. But see what's nice, it has such a nice big wide lid that you can cut this hole. And I love the fact that you can pour from jug to jug. Pouring from these, you're always spilling it and making a mess. So maybe we've come up on a free, and there's nothing better than something you can make for almost no money or free money or whatever. And then it'll make your flying or your time at the field even more enjoyable. Now we have this dedicated box when we fly to B-25. We take this box with us, and it has the electric starter, the battery, and God knows what else. But we found this 2-quart fuel thing. This is 64 ounces in a container store. And so that makes it handy. And the fact that it fits in this tub and we need to be moving things around when we're starting and running 2 engines at the same time. So the gallon jug never fit in there, and I never was happy with having the other too many things floating around. This just makes it perfect. As soon as we get this, I'm going to scrape the rest of this. And this by now it should be soaked off. It'll come off. Yeah, it's coming off now. But M600 takes the glue off. I'll re-clean it, make sure it's clean, run some old fuel through it, and then I want to set up the top for a cap. And then what's hopefully going to happen here, I'm going to make a piece of plywood that extends out over this, and a little way, I don't know, maybe a little box or something to confine it. But this will be a nice, relative to how heavy that other box was, that other box, you could get a hernia carrying it. In fact, I had 2 of them. Then the only thing is to see if, in this area, because we'll have the plywood over here, maybe we can put our little trim things in here, or tip weights, or some little minor thing. It won't be a big problem. See, when I fly, I need to have with me at all times, because we have a bug problem at the circle burner field. Alcohol, because we pretty much always run solid lines. Sunscreen, because I've had these bouts with skin problems and the beginning of skin cancers. Of course, we fly in cold weather from time to time. I always keep a little bit of lighter fluid with me. So, and I always like to have a minimum of 3 batteries. Because what happens when you get to the field, somebody's always borrowing 1 or 2 batteries. I always have the thing to put over my finger to flip the prop. And the tools that you really do need on a regular basis. And this little box that Alan Spooner made with the little extension, I think that's going to work out okay when we're all done with it. This little tool that we use for doing the regular fuel pumps, In fact, see the piece that comes out here, it's hard to get it out. And it gives us the diameter hole, but you could cut this you could cut this with a razor blade or a Dremel tool, it wouldn't really matter. But it really should be a tight fit if you do this on your own. Now the pumps come apart relatively easily. These just unscrews. You don't want to lose the ball check valve or the spring. And we're ready to use it, except for the fact we're going to have to put a little piece of tubing in here we JB welded on. And when that dries, that'll be our new, well, hopefully our new pump. Might have to trim that tube, but let's see. Not really. It looks like it's going to be a perfect fit just the way it is. Anyway, and when we have that all done and have the little tube JB welded on there, I think that'll be a nice little upgrade, and it's that price that everybody in Control Line Stunt seems to love. Free. Spend 10 minutes and you don't have to carry an anvil around with you all day long.
It's going to take a while to cut on the Dremel.
Now Les laid out a little addition to the toolbox, which I think is going to be kind of cool. But everything Les does is cool. Well, I can cut this out. Yeah, this is while you're working on your flaps. Let me cut this out and make this is fill-in work.
Let me tell you what we're doing here. Okay. This is where the hell's a pencil?
What we're doing is drinking coffee.
Pencil, not a pen.
Yeah.
Pencil.
Right here. 1, 2, 3, 4,
oh,
5.
Smart ass.
We'll hide them. I'll put them on a work table.
Okay, here's the bottom. Okay. Here's the side.
Is this going to be like a kit? A Les's toolbox kit?
Yeah, send us out and have somebody laser cut it for us.
I'm going to have you laser cut it.
Okay, this is end, and this is end, and this line you don't pay any attention to that. Okay, here's your first cut, end to end. Okay. Then your second cut is
just one more use for our perma-grit box, making toolboxes.
Well,
yeah, that works nice.
Anytime you need a straight, and this is the. Is
there a better tool in the whole shop than that perma-grit thing? Unbelievable how good that works.
All right, that's close enough for jazz, and we're not building a Taj Mahal here. And then
my toolbox is not the Taj Mahal.
My toolbox.
When we build your toolbox, it's the Taj.
My toolbox gonna have little minarets on the top and palladium.
Oh man, it's just Wendy's toolbox. I give him a cigar box or something. Oh, what an attitude problem we have here in the shop.
Well, you see, when you do that, what you need is 2 passes with this.
Oh yeah.
And it, it takes the splinters. And
yeah, I hate getting splinters
right off.
I'm such a baby. Les designed this little accessory box that we're going to put our box right inside, and well, I guess we're going to see how that works. He's laying out the flaps. These are going to be the flaps for his Paladin.
5/8 to 5/16 test.
I just love the idea of not having to carry a gallon of fuel around me like an albatross around my neck. I'm not that strong in my old age, you know. Got all the wood already set up for that?
No. Not yet. 5/16 plus an eighth. 5/16 plus an eighth. I'd like to build an end in here.
Okay.
So then this whole thing would be like a wet area for fuel, and if you got a
jug of alcohol
or something like that.
Okay.
All right.
So this is the little box that Les envisioned up.
That goes around the even smaller box.
And I just got to get. I know Karen has some of this florist foam to stick the tools in. That is going to be pretty cool. And you're going to do flaps tomorrow?
Yeah.
Okay, so
they're all drawn. All I got to do is tape that down tomorrow and start with the weights.
You finished up the drawing today?
Go get the wood now.
And you're going to pick up wood after work? And we're making 1,000 more belt cranks. Just what we need.
At least.
These lovely little puppies, they take forever to make. All right, I'll see you tomorrow.
All right.
Good day. This was a good one.
No, not really.
What I did, I mixed up 3 ounces of West resin. I'm just going to paint this part. This is the part that's going to take a tremendous beating. I let this dry overnight, put it up on a coffee can, paint on a nice coat of West resin, and then tomorrow organize how I want to put this in place. But the West resin should seal it up real nice. Well, thanks to Les's help, I think this worked out really well, and we got a nice, relatively lightweight. It's about a third the weight of the old toolbox. And what I'm going to try to get is a couple of the bottles from prescriptions, since we take so many prescriptions in this family, and one to put glow plugs, one to put tip weight, and I'll have a little spot. I made this little spot, Les made this little spot in here that just fits prescription bottles. So that was a nice little addition to our ongoing attempt not to run over the toolbox. What I wanted to do today in this session, I got my carbon shell, I have the mold out, and I have the drawing, and I wanted to start laying out some of the formers and some of the bulkheads in the fuselage section. Now this is totally sanded down with 80 grit paper. You can see how rough it is, and that's to put a prep on the finish. The whole idea of this thing was going to be, and we're going to still try to do it of course, is going to be to put the formers in while this is in the, and you can see how it fits, it keys in up here. And we're going to try to lay out some of the formers while that's right in position. But the first thing I need to do is make some notations on here. I need to mark where the front of the wing is going to set in here, and I have all these reference lines. So what I'm going to do is mark it right actually on the mold itself, and I can reference from this corner, from the front, set the wing position, and then I need to figure out where exactly the nose wheel is going to set, make the bulkheads for the nose wheel. So I got a lot of little things I can be doing here. I don't expect Les will be here for 3 or 4 hours. I don't know if he's even going to make it today, but I figured I'd get started on these formers. I guess the first thing I want to do is set the wing dimension onto the mold so I know that's where my primary bulkhead is going to go. I can just set this out if I need a better pen. Now I also want to make sure that I got these 90 degrees. I don't want to have the bulkheads in crooked. And a lot of this I'm going to have to do a little tricky way to check that the bulkhead is in straight. First I'll make a reference line and then see if I'm close. That's going to be for the forward bulkhead. I laid a piece of 1/8 inch tape on center in the mold. Now what I'm going to try to do is I'm going to try to set this to make sure I have 90 degrees. I'm going to put a little mark on this tape, and then I can reference from the tape itself as I flip that. See, I've got a pretty accurate 90 degrees both ways. So that's going to set my forward former. Next thing is to transpose down the wing where we're going to actually put the airfoil, the stab, and of course I've used the stab to verify that that's all the way it's going to be. That's accurate. we've actually been pretty accurate from working on the plans. Now that we have these positions, these parts laid out, the whole idea of putting the formers in while this is in its mold, I guess is the right word, container, it should help keep the fuselage perfectly straight. Now, whether that's going to really work, we're sure going to find out. But I have to start somewhere, and I guess I'll start with the wing mount. I can't make the back wing mount until I actually have the cutout, but this will firm up the fuselage, and I'm trying to lay this out in my mind, build it in my mind, and then maybe I'll work from there forward with the formers, and then from the wing back with the formers. I also need to figure out the height, the push rod height, and this height, draw a line so I know how long those formers are going to be when I actually start dropping in the formers that have to have a trough for the push rod. So it's going to be pretty challenging, and I'm certainly not going to rush through it, but I have to start somewhere, and laying out this bulkhead, which is actually going to be a double bulkhead. It's going to be a bulkhead and a bulkhead that's bolted to the back of it so we can have something to glue the wing onto. And that's going to be the first part of, well, we've been building it in our mind for a long time, and now it's, when you talk the talk, you have to walk the walk. Now I'm going to lay this first bulkhead up, because it's going to be a double bulkhead. I'm going to lay it up out of 1/8" light ply, make sure that edge is 90 degrees. It's 3.5 inches. I'll make it a little bit bigger, and then sand it until I have the shape that I want. Now I'll make a paper pattern pretty much for all of these parts. Now this just has to be a double, and I don't know what the final shape is going to be until I actually start laying it out. This will be where the wing mounts to the fuselage, and we have the take-apart feature. And by the way, some of this would probably work on a take-apart plane, except if there was a motor in a fuselage, I would want to make this out of real plywood, not light ply. But in our case, I think this will be fine. And of course I have the primary grain going side to side on all these formers. Now, what I have to do, now that you can see how tight that fit is. Now that I have the fit that I want to make exactly a mirror image of this and bolt the two of them together. But what I'm going to do is leave a little bit of clearance on each side so that when the wing gets put in, I don't have this rubbing up on the fuse side. In fact, what's going to happen anyway is I'm going to wind up, maybe a 1/16, actually 1/8 of an inch in. I could make it 1/8 of an inch smaller already, because the fuse side goes in. The fuselage sides are going to they're going to be 1/8 inch balsa at this point. We're going to throw this piece away. So I can make this piece, the bulkhead that's going to attach to the wing can be 1/8 of an inch thinner on both sides. Time I get a part, I take some cardstock, and this is just art paper, and the purpose of this is to help Mike out when it gets to his time to make the bulkheads. This will just save him the time. Make a kind of a mirror image of each part, and then put any notations on it that need to happen. In this case, the part that's going to bolt onto this will be 1/8 of an inch thinner on each side. Now the best way to get a good alignment on both of the holes is to drill one side, and what I do, I'll put a washer on this when I finally assemble it, but I just want to get this brass little fitting in place. And that's going to kind of set me, let me just push this in, since it's a really pressed tight, there it goes, pressed tight fit. Now what I have to do now, that keeps the bolt nice and snug. Now I have to grind a little bit of this away with a Dremel tool so that it lines up with the side with the blind nut. The easiest way to do any 2-bolt patterns, Drill one bolt, put the blind nut in, then line up the second piece and drill this. This acts as your setup to get this one nice and accurate. Now that that side is nice and flush, I can line this up. Again, I don't have to make this real tight right now. I put two little marks on this so I would always be able to get it lined up until it's actually put in place. It'll just help as an alignment feature. The little idiosyncrasies of building a take-apart plane, basically the ones I found there, that you lose time. At this point in time, we're going to lose a couple of days making all these little fits and everything, but somewhere down the road when we go to buff and finish, we'll make up much more than this amount of time. And now with one side bolted together like that, let me just get this aligned, because I want to have the fuse side is going to come in and actually hook to this side. So this side has to be just a little bit smaller. Now with this lined up, I can drill and repeat the same thing. And that becomes one half of the take-apart bulkhead. Of course, I have to do the same thing in the back, but it'll be a totally different shape. What's nice about this is now we have a really perfect alignment. When those screws go in, they're not going to be off or cocked one way or another. So this should make for a real nice assembly to set up this removable wing feature. I always do, I take a bolt with a little bit of chain lube or oil the threads before I CA the bolts in place. In this case, I'm going to try, and I'm not sure this is going to work the way I want. I'm going to try to make these that the bolts come out from the back. In other words, I feed the bolts in from the tail toward the front instead of the other way around on a B-25, because I don't want to have that big hatch. I would like to minimize the hatch. So by going in from the back with the bolts, maybe I can just leave a hatch underneath where the wing actually bolts in place, and I can get these from both ends. Now the objective of doing that is I can maybe make the hatch look like Bombay doors. Again, we'll see. Not a critical thing, but one of the things I'm thinking of. Now the next thing, I need to strip off some balsa wood and make some little supports. In other words, I don't want to... This is a critical thing when you're making a carbon fiber plane. To glue wood to carbon fiber, after the carbon fiber has been post-cured, you've got to use either special resin to really get the best strength possible. Maybe the formers you could CA in or something, but these are parts that are going to work. So I'm going to build a lip on one side, a triangle lip, so that when this goes in, I have a much bigger surface area to work with. And then I have some special glue that Dave Midgley brought when he was down here on his last visit to try. It's a special post-cured glue. We used to use West 237, but now that Midgley has access to this other glue, we're going to give that a try. But we do have both in case we want to use them. Now the purpose is if I were to glue this in place, and this is kind of a nice fit, the problem that I would be worried about is that I'm only really gluing to this edge. So by having that triangle stock on both sides, I just really want to increase my footprint area. And this and the one in the back and the one that holds the tail on, these really hold the plane together. These are not just going along for the ride like some of the other formers that are there to make the fuselage shape. Let me get the phone. You can see how much bigger of a footprint those little balsa triangles give you. And it's actually a press fit. Now, of course this is going to get that special epoxy. I haven't decided which. I have that stuff from Dave, and I'm going to do a little test with it and see if I'm happy with it. I have both of the glues, but you really do need to use special glue. Two of the tricks. One of them is anywhere, and we've already sanded some of this, anywhere you're going to glue the post-cured carbon fiber, and this is one of the spots. I have the roughest paper I get my hands on, a minimum of 80 grit. Get that surface rough. I'll clean it with M600. Because once you make this bond, it's a forever bond. And the rougher it is, the better. You can't picture if this was a smooth piece of glass and you glue to it, or a rough piece of sandpaper. The rougher you can always get, the rougher it is, the better of a tooth you're going to get. Now here's what happened. I looked at the two things. This is what I used on the Typhoon. Had it in smaller tubes. It's with number 175 resin, number 273 hardener. This is special stuff. Just had a battery go dead, so there's probably a glitch there. Anyway, let me back this up a little bit. I have two different types of resin that's made for secondary bonding. Secondary bonding is when a carbon fiber part is already post-cured, or a fiberglass part is already done doing its curing cycle. So this is special glue. It's got to be mixed 2 to 1. And I'm just going to reread, because they do change this from time to time. I haven't used this in a year or two. Any epoxy that's rated as adhesive or glue is always the higher end material. One of the things I remember about doing the glue, because I did it with CST, I was the one that introduced them to it. This is a thixotropic adhesive. When it's mixed, and it's here's the volume, 2.23 to 1, so it's about just a little less than 2 1/3 to 1. What's a good way to do this is to mix up, in this case 10 and 23, or something more than you need. It doesn't go off very quickly. Adhesive, that's the key to this. Now, that's one of the choices I have, and that's what I'm going to go with. Now this is something Dave got from Extreme Adhesives, 537 5HS, high strength composite adhesive. We were going to use this. Now, actually, I was going to do it to do some testing on the composite wing. The reason I decided not to do this, by the way, this goes somehow on here. I'd have to, you have to take this cap off, and it's self-mixing. The problem with having this might be just as good, may even be better, but it's an unknown. And on a joint like this, I don't want to take any chances. So having thought about it for a while, the Pro Set, we'll save this for some future. In fact, we'll do it on Midgley's plan. We'll do it on something where it won't be a big deal if it breaks, just so I can test it. But this is proven stuff. I'm going to mix up a little batch and get that former in there. Has to be, again, has to be measured on a gram scale and measured accurately. This is not something you just, like just slap together like you're making a cupcake. Full calculation. 10 is the piece of cardboard, 12 is the material, and I'm going to add just over 5, so this is going to be... Now, the trick is, and don't ever do this at home, I have a separate little stick for the hardener, separate little stick for the epoxy. Always a good idea to swirl it up a little bit, even though this doesn't settle out. Now I try to get the material close, and I'll mix a lot more than I need. The reason is that not because I want to throw material away. Now I see that's a little bit too much. Again, this is always the part of composites that's, see, I'm going to make sure I don't get any of the material, especially one molecule of this in that can of hardener, and $60 worth of glue goes down the drain. So we got a little bit too much left. Now I went too much. I really do want to get this accurate. Now, the trick is what I've done in the past. I've used this stick to clean it up. Well, that's not good either. That's not really the best way, because this is one of our structural things. What I'll do is I'll take a brand new stick. See, here's the key. If you have a stick in each can and you don't crisscross them, by the way, this stuff smells atrocious. Okay, so now we have roughly the mix. Next thing on this is to mix it. And when you think it's mixed, you see how it homogenizes and changes color? Well, when you think it's mixed, give it a minimum of 2 minutes more of mixing. This is going to create a secondary bond, probably stronger than steel itself. So, just as an example, the engine, the 91 in the Sato that's in the Typhoon, on a carbon crutch against the carbon body, This is what's holding that whole thing together, and we've never ever had even the slightest hint of a crack in the paint on that plane. So this is the material of choice for me. Now see, because I've mixed so much, the odds of getting it accurate are better. If you mix one little dot and one little dot, boy, do you run a risk that you'll have 3 to 1, or that the mix will be a problem. And on a critical joint like this, I would say most critical would be the motor mounts. Second, the wing to tail joints, wing to fuselage joints. Those we all want to have absolutely the best secondary bonding resin we can get. Okay, now I'm going to mix this off camera another 2 minutes and we'll be ready to set this in place. Now this stuff really does stink. If you like the smell of rotten eggs, just leave a can of this somewhere in your friend's car. If you remember back to the old Typhoon projects and some of their projects, these were the original tubes we got from CST, and you can see what's happened. You can see what the shelf life of this material is. This is like a rock. So we're basically going to dump all the old material, and anytime you're using these high-end resins, they have a shelf life. Buy new material for the amount you need, especially in this. If this bulkhead comes loose halfway through a season, we not only could lose the plane, but there's a good chance we'd hurt somebody. Again, these are critical structural joints, so we just can't run that risk that they're not going to be the best we can make them. Again, my whole philosophy for building a plane is that a plane should last as long as I last. I would hope that in an all-perfect world, the day I died, all my planes would still be flying. Even if I wasn't flying them, that they'd be in a Brodak Museum, or they'd be somewhere, or somebody'd be enjoying them anyway. Now we're going to carefully put this in place. I wanted to show this once because then from that point on, it'll really be just redundant information. Mixing the glue, we're going to press this in place and make sure we have a really good footprint. Now this is thixotropic, which means it doesn't drip down. There won't be any dripping, so just clean this edge up, and we're going to set this in position. Okay, we got plenty of glue down here now. To repeat that story about Klaus Makis, Klaus was flying a plane, and I think this is when I was newsletter editor, but I'm not sure. And what had happened was, he basically the joint failed and the plane came apart in flight. Not a great thing. Okay, that's even, that's even. Now, just need to check it. In fact, I don't want to check it that way. I want it to be off of my reference. And close that way. Just a little bit that way. Now I'll put a clamp or something here. Maybe a little piece of tape would be enough, piece of duct tape. Get out all the extra of the glue, and you can see quite a bit of it does come out. But when that hardens up, that is going to be one, hopefully one really solid joint. Again, I'll recheck it once I put the clamp pressure on it. I put that duct tape in there under tension. Going to let that sit. While that's sitting, I want to make it, and I'm not going to videotape every one of these formers, but basically going to make the same thing for the location of the nose wheel. I'll measure back, make up some formers and a little gear block, get that little assembly in. I'm trying to plot this and try and build it in my mind. Then I'm going to need the one that goes in the back of the wing, and that's going to be angled very slightly, very slight angle, so that we can drop the wing right in. And then the last one, I'm going to have to decide how I'm going to work on this back end, whether the tail is going to go in from the bottom or from the top, and where the joint is going to be. So we still have a lot of decisions to make. I think the nose wheel will be the next best thing, and it's going to be very similar to this piece. And we need to have a block because we want to make the gear removable, of course. couple other little tricks that seem to work well here. Since this section has a little bit of a curve to it, it's not a completely straight line. I'm being real careful about making patterns. Now, as I see, what I'm looking for is this hitting the hard spot high or low? Wherever it's hitting, I try to take out just a little bit of material at a time. Again, a nose wheel is another one of the structural parts I don't want to compromise and have, especially because we'll obviously have to land at Brodax or at some point in time on a rough field. Fitting these formas, this is something the first forma had a straight edge, so it wasn't real critical. But fitting these can be just time consuming. I always use the word sheetrock work. Just find where it's hitting and keep sanding away. When I'm done, I'll make a very accurate pattern, and hopefully that'll save Mike when it comes his time to assemble a fuselage. It looks like we're sneaking up on it right now. Now I can almost get it in there. And we're hard on the hull surface. So now, once I know I'm hard on the whole surface, what I can do is, in other words, it's not hitting here or here, it's hitting the whole surface. Now I can dress the whole surface off the thickness of a pencil line. Of course, that assumes that I have a pencil. You never assume anything in this shop. A great story. I picked up the phone before and dropped it on the floor, that walk-around headset phone. Broke it in half. And even when it was broken in half, it worked. It actually works better now that it's broke. Check this out. Remember when I drove over that phone last year? Well, this one's getting ready to be driven over. It broke in two pieces here. And since I taped it up, I had to put new battery wires in. It works better now than it did before. I don't know why they don't give you these. They don't run over them at the factory or something. Anyway, just little things you need to know. Okay, so now we have that little pencil line to work up to. We can take about half of it off at a time. What we're looking for is just a press fit. Oh, we are getting close now. See, that'll stay in there by itself. We have just a little bit more. And it really pays to do a good fitting on these, because otherwise there's going to be bulges in the fuselage when we're done finishing it and sanding it, and especially up in the nose section here where it's going to be a focal point with all that blue candy apple window paint. Oh, there we go. Okay, now I'm going to make the triangle supports. Same, now it just becomes redundant. I have to make one for back here, and when they're dry, then I'm going to make my gear block right in the middle here. So it'll be hooked into two of those formers. So from this point on, it's just a redundancy to doing the front one. Okay, after putting a lightning hole in and triangulating it. Now I'm going to get this piece made. This one is 1/10 of an inch bigger. Put some pressure on this and put some duct tape. But what I'll do is get this piece in next, and get some duct tape on there to hold the whole thing together while I'm working on it. And it looks like once we get some of these critical formers in, then filling in between with balsa wood is not going to be real critical. And I've been thinking of a little tricky way of doing that too. I'm full of tricks today. This is going together very nicely though. And having this, I wasn't sure if I was going to like working in the mold. So far, it looks like this is going to be one of the methods of choice of building in the future. And when that part comes out, that should be relatively, that word relative is always important. It should be relatively straight if the original part was straight. And I'm sure the part was straight. We measured that 1,000 times. Which probably means it'll be crooked. Now the next step, I'm going to leave this piece down just a little bit, down 1/8 of an inch, so I can put the gear block plate right on top. Hey, who invited you to work on this plane? We're going to make up this piece which is very standard with the wire slot in it. And then one side will butt up against here, and this, because most of the pressure is going to be down, what it'll do, it'll give us a good rigidity here. And then the part that's going to confine the wire will be right up against the fuselage side, so we'll have about a 1-inch torsion arm to the middle. And I think that's going to work just about as good as I could expect. No way did I cut the piece that's going to ultimately be our gear block here. And just like we always make gear blocks, this is kind of a cut and dry thing. We'll center the wire. Just take a piece of 1/8 inch end grain. Must be end grain. Lay this out right on the plywood itself. Go cut 2 oversized pieces, and we'll be able to glue that right up. So what we want to do here, get one side on, and no matter how you make these gear blocks, these little blocks, the important thing in this case is the force of a nose wheel is always going to be back. It's going to be predominantly back and up. So we want to make sure in those 2 dimensions we have it right. Now, I actually use the wire itself to space my, this is just end grain, 1/8 inch. Now once that's going to kick in a minute or so. And we're going to have to fashion a similar block to hold a wire that actually goes up in the fuselage, and that's going to have to be glued in with our secondary bonding glue also. Now once that kicks off, you can picture what's going to happen. I'll give it a minute to kick. I don't want to use kicker if necessary, unless it's really necessary. Once that kicks, you can pull the wire out, and I have an exact notch for that wire. And it doesn't need to be any stronger than that. I've never broken one of those. With the wire out. Now, just go over to the belt sander, and I can dress these right off, nice and square, and I know we'll have a really nice fit for that wire. And because I don't even need to make a cover, a hatch cover, this is going to be an opening here so that we can get in and put some nose weight in. So I'm going to leave the opening as if the gear, how should you say it, the door would have an opening so the gear could retract. I'm going to leave that gear door partially open with the idea in mind that I can get in, put nose weight in, take nose weight out, whatever the case may be. What I'm trying to and of course take the nose wheel off. What I'm trying to avoid is having that. The B25 has a big hatch in the front, and I don't want to have the big hatch. I'd like to have the whole front sealed except for the nose wheel, and then have the hatch under the wing to get the bolts in. But again, we're going to see if that's going to work. When I build it in my mind, it works great, but it's got to work in the real world. That's the only problem. Anyway, this is how all the gear blocks are made, and this really does work well. And before I grind it, I'll just harden all the edges up with thin CA. The edges of the wood here. I've never found it necessary to use those like spruce blocks or whatever they are. And these are a fraction of the weight. Now that's hardened that up. Now it'll be ready to grind this down. To get these edges all even, next thing is going to be the wire that's going to go down into the fuselage. The bird, will you get out of here? The wire that's going to go down in the fuselage, I need to have an access 1/8 inch hole for the wire. And now I'll also take this and cut that piece of material out so that wire can just find its own piece right on the edge of the fuselage. And then I need to make that block up next. Let's see how this all worked out. This little piece is going to be a confinement piece that's going to be for our landing gear wire. In other words, this piece is going to go down into the fuselage. When that's glued on there, that'll keep the wire from going back and forth. That's step one. So we're going to have to mix up another batch of this post-cured resin, get that in place. This piece is going to drop right in here. And the last piece, I'm going to try to get all three of these in at the same time. Well, first I'll probably get the former in first. Get all these in. And then get some duct tape on here to just squeeze it together. This is our last little piece. This will hold the wire. The wire will go down through there into the fuselage. We have two blind nuts on there, and we can use aluminum screws to attach this. That's basically a replication of what we have in a B-25, so there's no reason to think that won't work. Anyway, time to mix glue. We'll do this off camera, mix it all up. Same as we did the original bulkhead, mix it up, get all these parts glued in, get some kind of compression on them. And so that ends today's little adventure, and while we're hopefully sleeping, the epoxy will be drying. Now I always save this, and in the morning I look to see that it's cured. You just never know. Always a safe, and you have to have, where's the first one here? The first one here is already solid as a rock. Anyway, we will come back to this tomorrow, pick this up from where we left off. We got to do the mail today and see what's happening in the world of stunt. Now, one of my customers that they buy a lot of tapes is the Singapore Youth Flying Club. And look at these nice stamps. Oh, I wish I was a stamp collector. Very cool stamps. My friend Arnie Haber has a, oh my God, $1 million stamp collection. I bet he'd want these. And get the phone. This morning, while we were having coffee, Karen had a great idea. She said, why don't you take, because all these little prescription bottles that we have, since I'm organizing my toolbox, she's going to save these for me, so I have, and you know, various sizes and stuff for my new toolbox. And you know, it's that price that all control line stunt flyers love, free. And you probably have them right in your house. If you're like me, you're on 10 medications and you can save the bottles. Anyway, great little idea from Karen. I think that's going to work well as we get our toolbox reorganized. Now our fuselage formers sat in the mold and up by the heating vent all night, and since it was pretty cold last night, I assume plenty of heat got on there. That should mean that the glue joints are ready to be worked on. So that feels as solid as a rock. So we're just going to pull all the tape off now and then start making up the rest of our formers. I have a nice little idea of how I want to do this. We'll see how it works out. I've been thinking about it. I'm thinking about making little I-beam formers, putting a cap strip of like 16th balsa or something equivalent to that along the side, and then putting a former here so it would be like an I-beam. And I don't know how many formers we're going to need. What I'm going to do is try to figure out, well, on the B-25 I had 1 per inch, and I think because this is carbon, maybe we can get away with 1 every 2 inches. Anyway, once we pull this apart, we're going to see. The things I do at the beginning of every session where I've done epoxy work the day before, this is a critical thing. I saved a little, well, this is one of 2 or 3 of them there, I don't know. I saved this because this tells me how the glue has gone off. Now, even no matter where you buy glue, you never know how old it is. And when glue goes out of code, and it does, you saw what happened, it just turns to a lump. Just before it goes out of code, it looks like it's drying, but it doesn't. And what happens is, you lose some strength in the joints. Well, now in this case, these are joints. I don't want this nose wheel coming out of the plane or this bulkhead flying out. So by looking at this, I can feel with my fingernail, I'm pressing as hard as I can and I can't put a fingernail mark in there. That means this glue has kicked off in, well, roughly 18 hours, let's say. Give it an hour or two either way. But all epoxy is always, if you really wanted to know how strong it would be at its maximum, it would always be rated at how strong it is after 24 hours. In this case, this is a special glue. It gets hard in 24 hours, then within 7 days it gets a whole lot harder and stronger. And then once it's post-cured, and what we're going to do is when we get all the formers in this, just put it back in the oven at 212 degrees for 2 hours, and it's going to turn these joints into what amounts to be the strongest material I've ever seen. I mean, this is really strong stuff now. But anyway, just thought I'd mention it. This is something you should be aware of. And if you do a little test, like we just glued this little stick in there, you're going to break the stick. There's no way you're going to get that stick out of there. So that's always good to test that you have fresh glue and test that your joint is cured before we go ahead and work on this, because I don't want these formers loose or falling out or anything. Heat will always help. If you can put it up by a heating vent, it'll always go quicker. If you put it out in the garage where it's cold, it'll take 2 days to do it. It's always based on 72 degrees ambient temperature. Oh, these solid. They are really in there. Really impressed with how nice that worked out. I want to dress this off, even with the bottom. Took all the duct tape off. This just looks as solid as you can imagine. Try to get these relatively level. Now what I need to do is I'm going to look at, this piece is going to have, of course, our nose section glued on. I want to work on this section next, and I want to probably divide it into 1, 2, 3 sections. And I'll do that with a ruler to mark, or maybe 4. And then I'm going to make my I-beam formers in here. And luckily, by looking at this, to make 3 formers, we have to span 11 inches. That's not going to work. I don't want them that far apart. So what I'm going to do, and I'll lay this out with a center line, is I'm going to make them 2 1/4. Now I've basically got, let's see how that looks with 3. 2 1/4 is still a lot. It's still too much. And then narrow this down. Even that's too much, so let's try 2 1/2. You just kind of, I always do this by eye anyway. This one is a little more, but this will be, we'll favor the back on this, and that'll be close enough. So now I want to lay out where my bulkheads are going to be. This is what's nice about working this way. I can just erase this with a little bit of M600 and lay them out. Maybe I even put 4 in here. I'm going to lay it out with 4. When I put them an inch apart, I think that's overkill because we do have a relatively solid surface. 2 inches is, I think the most we're going to be able to do is about 2 1/4 here. Any more than that, and it's going to start to have waves in it in the final fuselage. Okay, we finally compromised on 2.7 and having 3 bulkheads. Being a designer, you know, this is one of the choices you have to make. If you're building from plans, somebody's already done all this work for you, of course. I want to see once I take this out of the shell. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to make these 3 formers up in I-beam style, and then I want to see, I'm going to take this out of the shell, this comes right out of course, and then squeeze it and see how stiff it is, because don't forget the bottom from here forward is going to be glued on, so I don't need a lot of rigidity. And then I think the hatch is going to be, in essence, where the Bombay doors are, and maybe I can make that hatch look like it's
bolt-in Bombay doors. Just a thought, just a thought. Okay, the next thing is going to be to set up the strips.
Tell me the truth, Mike. Look at the camera. I know you're all dressed and you can't play dirty ball suit. Time to have two of these at the field?
Oh yeah.
Gee, I know a guy that's got two of them in his cellar right now. Yeah, the wing is as good as I ever expected it to be. The fuse is going to be perfect. This way of building is really making me think, wow. It was good to see Mike Costello, but I know it's going to save him a lot of time just having the patterns for this, and so I've made him like a little commitment that I would spend enough time that it would be necessary to make a pattern for all these, which I'm going to start soon. Just trying to clean up a lot of loose ends. I got another project I'm working on, making a display shelf up in the train room, and I got to airbrush some more of the tracks, but we'll do that off camera. We're basically going to try to finish these formers today if we can. It's like the first thing I want to do here is cut up what amount to be cap strips, and I'm trying to figure the length of the cap strip. Let's see, roughly that length would work. So I can strip off some balsa wood and just lay all the cap strips in one shot. Now the base of this piece is going to be, and I tried test fitting this, it's going to be 2.5 inches. I stripped these off, and we're going to try making one former this way. Well, we'll cut all of these at one time. The idea here is that we won't have as much tendency to see the rib through if they're a little thicker. And I don't need to have 1/4 inch formers. What I'm trying to do is get a lot of these to be almost the same. But the idea is this will spread the load out when I make a T out of this. Now, because this is going to be a footprint, I think CA, thick CA will be fine here. This is not going to be a structural member. And this is a good way to install these, by the way, on the end of a number 11 blade. Now what we'll do is we'll go down on both sides and put our little parts in before figuring out what the former shape should be. Another thing I have to keep in mind here, because this part is not actually glued into the mold, of course, we can just pick this up. See how it comes right up? So what I want to be sure that I don't get too cute on, I don't put some thin CA in here and glue this to the mold, so we're aware of that. In fact, what I may do is take this piece out and wax the mold, just to make sure if some CA does get in there, I don't wind up having to take a chunk out of the mold. Put all the pieces in. Now I just want to take the edge off. This will allow me to make a little better of a structure, because I don't want to have these corners. In other words, the biggest load is in the middle and it spreads out. There's no reason to have a corner. A corner is only going to make for a stress riser. Not that this is really critical, but I have a minute to do this. And by the way, you probably could make a turtle deck or a bottom block or something using the same idea, that you would not see the formers. I hopefully will not see the formers, but on the Typhoon, it still looks like we're relatively solid, but you never know. And I just want the insurance on this. Now, the next thing is going to be, I got to start laying out the formers. All the grain on every former, even the plywood, the main grain is going side to side. Roughed out oversize each one of the formers. Now the question will be to see how much I need to sand off of this. And it's pretty, well, I can taper it. You want to get the slightest amount off of this just to get a press fit. And then I'll glue all of them in with thick CA, not thin, because I don't want any capillary stuff going down through the material if there's a pinhole in the material. And that's a nice press fit. So I think that's going to work well for us. And it won't be much of a challenge getting these in. They're basically square with just the slightest curve. So we'll fill these in as the next step. More phone calls today, unbelievable. Now that completes what I think is going to be what's necessary up in the nose section here. Now I need to make a fake, I should say a fake bulkhead where the wing is going to end. I'll make it out of balsa wood, but then it's going to get cut away. It's just to hold this in position, really. And maybe I ought to put some fake bulkheads in here just while we're working on it. But for right now I need to do basically the same thing I did up here, back here, and work all my way back to the tail. So that'll be the next thing. Not much point in putting that on camera, but getting very redundant anyway. But here's what I have to take into account. I have to lay out carefully what the dimension is from the bottom of the fuselage to where the push rod is going to be, so that each one of these, I don't wind up having a former go right where the push rod should go. So what I'll do is I'll measure off this area out onto the plan and see where the formers will actually go, and then I can take the length of the formers off of the back. And it's just going to be a question of starting at one end and working my way down. I like the way this worked out with the little I-beam action. I think that's going to be real nice. And again, I can't really put this plywood former in until I take the cutout for the wing. But it would be nice, I'll have a dummy former in here that I can cut away just to hold it in position. Alright, what I have here, I laid out the positioning of the formers to correspond with the front, and then I laid out the same thing on the drawing and made the length, measured the length of each former. So this will be easy for Mike. You won't have to go back and do this over and over again. And it allows this yellow area and a little bit of clearance for the maximum deflection of the horns and the arrow shaft. So now the same thing is going to be, when I pull this up here, is to just go former to former to former to former to former, put the cap strips in, measure the width, make sure I have a tight fit, start at one end, and just work down like building a traditional plane. But what's nice is having this confined like in this way, there's just very little chance that we're going to be making a banana here. This went pretty straightforward, and this should really be a help to Mike to have all these dimensions down. And of course the only other dimension you need is the width. It's a relatively straight box, and that looks like this whole fuselage is just looking like it's going together as nice as, and it's certainly convenient. It's convenient, first off, having the drawing and having these little balsa T's in place, the I-beams. I think that's just going to work out well for us. We're just going to have a real good chance of having a good fuselage. Very happy with the way this worked out. Now we're at the end of the back formers, one more up in the front, and we are, let's trim these off. The ones in the back go all the way up into the shell, of course, because there's no push rod interference. Just got to do the one in the front, and I would say that was a good production day. Oh, you have to leave the area because we got to do the cutout for the stab and make the mount, so that's a separate issue. Decided not to put this former in here, this temporary former, and I don't know what I'm going to do about that area down there yet, because I need to get the wing cutout in here before I can position that former. And the last one to do, I'm just going to make a former up here so that this will hold this in position when the nose piece is on, and then we probably could get in there and just Dremel it away if we want to. But it'll hold that in position. But right now, that's a pretty good production day to get that many formers in. The ones in the back don't have a little T. They really don't need it. They're not going to be doing anything back there. And it feels good to have the formers in there. It feels good. The drawing worked out well. And I've got a pattern for every part on here now. Now, like any fuselage, this will not be as rigid as it normally would be until we actually get the bottom piece glued on or attached. Because then we complete the box. Well, it's a three-sided box. It's rigid, but it's not as rigid as it's going to be in the final model. And I'm hoping I'm going to get away with, don't know if I am, get out with having no formers in here because there's nothing going on up there. The wing actually becomes the structure in between. And I still haven't decided how I'm going to do the tail cutout, the take-apart features. Every one of these take-apart planes has just a little bit different. They're similar, but they're not exactly the same. But each one we do, it just seems to make more and more sense to build them as take-apart planes. At least in our case, because it's easier to get inside and work on them and change things and do all the little things we always want to do. In fact, I wish some of the Spitfires were take-apart Spitfires, and I wish Tradition was a plane that I could have just unbolted the wing and tail and put a new body on. But hindsight. Now with the part out of the mold now I can see exactly as I go from the print to the mold to the finished part, or framed out part anyway. Now and only now will I take a chance and put thin CA down in all the joints, just double glue everything. This nose wheel mount looks like, when I pull this out of the mold, I think you could lift the plane up by this nose wheel mount. That's certainly going to be overkill. And this part's certainly over, so that's going to be plenty strong. So, at this point, we've reached yet one more nice little, a nice, I don't know, watershed, whatever you want to call it. And when we get back here and work on this tomorrow, we'll think about some of the other things we want to do and how we want to set up to put the wing in there. That's going to be the next step. Now today what I did, I sanded this all down with rough paper. There's still some little imperfections in it, some little things I'm going to have to address later on after we put the finish on. But right now it's relatively flat. Where there aren't any formers, of course, it's still pretty flexible. Where there are formers, it's nice and solid. I want to get it perfectly clean because the next step of this is going to be to lay out the position and the cutout for the wing, and that is a critical thing. That is something that I need to get the center line, and then I need to get a very, very accurate template of the wing root. Now with this perfectly clean and degreased, I don't know about perfectly clean, but it's cleaner anyway. Both sides of this, I ran this on a sanding block. Both sides are totally parallel, and they're not off one way or the other. I want to lay out my wing root, and the easiest way to do this is on tape. Tape actually will stick to this a lot better than trying to write on it with an ink marker. It's a lot easier to do it with tape. This is a good way to do it with any carbon parts. Now I'm trying to lay this out. I thought I would luck out and have tape the thickness of the center line to this. Not going to happen. So it's better, I should just get this on with multiple pieces of tape. And this will allow me to get my center line on here. I can go all the way to the back here. Now we know our reference datum line is going to be the bottom of this part. So if we set the wing in this position, we already have the nacelles relative to the wing. All we have to do is line up this line with the tail, and we should have some really good alignment. Now in my bag, my illustrious bag of tape, I have this striping tape that has all these very fine lines, and you can see what they've, I don't know if you can see this, but it tears and leaves very thin strips up to a 1/16 of an inch. It's got all the cuts already in the tape, so what I thought I'd do, I'd try to lay this out, and then I could take my center line tape and just pull that out, and that'll be a center line. We'll see if this works, if this tape is, the tape's probably 100 years old here. And the first thing is to get this down parallel. This is called striping tape, and what it'll allow us to do is get a very accurate center line for laying out our template, but the most important thing is going to be to get an accurate template of the wing cutout, and we really can't use the root rib because we're going to be out 2 inches from the root, so we're going to have to hope that I have that on the B25 plans, and if I don't, I have to invent it. Now I measured exactly up where I want the center line, and I wanted the third piece. See, 1, 2, 3. This is the third one. See if I can pick this out. And if I can, I'll be very lucky. I think you can see what this is doing because it's got the scores already in it. And this will give us, we're parallel, and this will give us any variation of center line. This is exactly the dimension I wanted. So if this works out well, boy, we'll count ourselves as having a lucky day today. Okay, now I have a center line to work with, and I can basically eyeball my center lines front and back when I make the wing cutout. And of course I'll do the same thing on the other side. So I have this dimension now very accurate. And get rid of this piece of tape. I was just transposing it off the plan. Now, what I have done years ago when I used to do this kind of stuff, do all this striping, I got a big bag of all kind of striping tape, and I never knew what I was going to use it for, so we found something we can use it for. So now we have an accurate center line on both sides. They're parallel and they're equal. The next thing is going to be to lay out with a 90-degree triangle where the front of this is. I need to know where the front of this wing is going to be on each side. Now what I need to take into account is the bulkhead that's not on here yet. So I'm going to allow 1/8 of an inch when I cut this dimension in. So what I can do is just put a little scribe, but I got to allow 1/8 of an inch more because that bulkhead is not in place and that wing is going to butt up on that bulkhead. Okay, now back to our trusty, I use tape for so many things, but this is 1/8 inch tape. We have an 1/8 inch bulkhead, so this should give me exactly the dimension I want to have. And it's that back dimension that I'm interested in. And this will be, from this point down, this will be our cut line. And what will happen is our new bulkhead is going to snap right in here. Let me think if I want to do this another way. No, I want to have the bulkhead on the outside. That sets my front clearance and hopefully gets the wing in as straight as possible. But the next thing I need to do is I need to have this template that's going to allow me to get this cut out, and I need to do it right off the wing. I'm going to make I have one on the B25 plans, but it's not exactly accurate, but I want to make one, and I want to make an exact cutout template so that I can get this line as accurate as possible. Even though I'm not going to use it, I don't want to have it that it's 1/8 of an inch up or 1/8 of an inch too low. I want it to be a nice accurate rendition because I'm going to put ultimately put a piece of 64th plywood on the edge, and I don't want to have to fill in with air epoxy here for a 1/4 of an inch. And we also have to account for, we've accounted for the bulkhead thickness. The fuselage is almost 4 inches wide. I need to know how much to account for. See, here's what's happening. These parts come together in a point, and I'm putting a flat bulkhead, and there's a little dimension at each end that I need to account for. I don't want to cut this all up. I don't want to take chunks out of this or anything. What I want to do is just figure out as rough as I can. On a 4-inch span, I've got to account for about another 1/8 of an inch. So it means where I'm going to set this back, the wing cutout actually will be back where it exits the wing is going to be back another 1/8 of an inch from the bulkhead, or a total of a 1/4 of an inch. Very important to have that set back. But what actually is going to happen is I'm going to be another 1/8 of an inch further back where the wing is going to actually exit. And that's something I better not forget to take into account right now, because this is going to be where we actually do the wing cutout hole. So I'll just lay out another piece of 1/8 inch tape. And this can get tricky. This can get to be the part when you're making a take-apart plane. If you don't account for all these thicknesses and things, it just makes a problem. This is going to be the actual spot that we're going to be using is going to be the back of this. Is going to be the side, and of course I got to account for that on the other side too. I remember the first or second time I did this and didn't account for all these little 1/8ths and 1/16ths, and when you get to the end it just looks really sloppy. You really don't have that nice neat look like the Europeans or some of the people that have made a lot of take-apart planes, where they get all the joints that look real nice. So that's going to be where our airfoil is actually going to, our cut and airfoil is going to come right up at that point. The other thing that can be a problem is you take the root rib, and a lot of people, including myself, take the root rib, but out here it's already an 1/8 of an inch shorter on both ends. So what we need to do is do a little interpolation and get this. I need this dimension right here, right about parallel to the horns, not the one in the middle. On the original B-25 drawing, I do have what should be that dimension. I'm going to make an accurate tracing on some tracing paper here. Quite a bit of time here trying to get this to be as accurate as I can, because I really want to have this line up with the center line. And what I'll do, I'll take some of that paint away, and I want to have the middle of the horn in the back line up with the center line. But that'll be the last job I get to do today, because it's getting late and I want to start nice and fresh. This is a job I want to do while I got plenty of energy and plenty of coffee and whatever. But we'll pretty well be ready to cut that wing out in tomorrow's session. His mail. I've been waiting for these a long time. This is from Scott Dinger. He had told me on the phone he was going to send some prototypes. These are prototypes of mufflers that he's making up. Now, what I think's exciting about these, and somebody may want to order one of these, is he's making them for all different engines, of course, but they're welded construction. Now remember, years back we had different ones where the ends were pressed in, and from time to time they would be a problem, or that this joint here would leak and you'd get black gringe all over the model. Well, these sure look nice. Now these are from Scott Dinger. I'm trying to see if they're a matched pair. Well, I got to read his note. Oh, one is the bigger tube, one is a smaller tube. Now we're not going to use these on the bomber, but believe me, this will not fit inside the cowl. But believe me, these work well, and when we do the engine testing, we'll definitely be using these. Now, this is a critical thing when you have one of these mufflers, and I've found this to be true, that this is offset. It's not in center. When this is offset, the gas tends to flow much better through there. And that's a critical thing. If you look at old Super Tiger mufflers, they were always offset. And some of the people that made them not offset, they were more restrictive, and the motors tend to run a little hotter. This one looks nice. They're two different size tubes, and boy, are they light. If you're looking for a lightweight muffler, wow. Now, I'm going to get Scott's phone number. He calls the little company, I guess is the right word, that he's working with, High Flow Mufflers. And his phone number is 805-526-9074. Now, he's going to be making us up some real special mufflers for the project we're working on here on the Bomber. He made them for the B-25, and he's going to be making them for the A-26. I've already volunteered him for the project. So, Scott, what we're looking for, and if anybody out there can help supply it, is old air conditioner tubing with the 90-degree bends. And if you're looking for some real high-tech, real polished-up kind of parts, custom, especially custom welding, I think Scott Dinger is your man. Anyway, that's his phone number. He calls his company High Flow Mufflers, and we're going to be using them. We were using them on a B-25 for the whole last 2 years or year, and we're going to be using them on the A-26. Thanks a lot, Scott. Just in case you missed the muffler, in case you missed a phone number, or you have any muffler special requests, Scott has really done a super job. And Scott, can't thank you enough. Project wouldn't be the same without it. Now, one great little thing came in the mail today too, and believe me, I treasure these little things. This is an exact copy. It's even the right color of Bob Zambelli's Ferrari. And we're going to add this to the flying field for sure. This is really nice. Really detailed model. Of course, it's the right scale too. Now, what we need, Bob, this would really be cool now. We need to have one of your planes. I know the trunk doesn't open on this, but we need to have a, maybe to put the plane on. I don't know. Bob Zambelli's Ferrari, you've seen it in real life. You've seen it on the visits to his home. He drives it on the street regularly, and it's nicely restored in really beautiful condition. He's a Ferrari collector. I think this model even belonged to his dad at one time. He didn't make a note, but I think he told me on the phone. But what we're definitely going to do, we're going to definitely add this to our train layout, right by the flying field, too. It has to be by the flying field. And add it to Michael Ferguson's MiG and some of the other things that Ed Cotton's planes. Just have a wonderful little collection up there. It's very enjoyable. And Bob, thanks a lot. Boy, do I ever enjoy this. I just enjoy every minute, every time that I'm here running the trains and flying a little miniature B-25. Just hard not to have a good time when you come up here, whether you're with your friends. And the other nice thing about this, having Dub Jet here and George Aldrich with the number 2, Ed Cotton's RC models, the big GV quarter scale. The thing that's nice is I can always change the score if I don't win. Wouldn't that be something, how we could figure that out? Always fun. Bob, thanks a whole lot. Dinger exhaust on the little B-25. What a blast. Well, we're going to pick up on the next tape, setting that wing in a body. That should be pretty interesting. Hope you've gotten some tips on little things you might be able to add to your modeling adventures. We've had a great week. This has been great. And it looks like the flying season may be only 3 months away. I'm not sure. Again, we want to thank Scott Dinger, thank Bob Zambelli, all the people that make the interaction that we have with our fellow modelers so much fun. And just being able to come up every night, every day, whenever we want, and just check out our Spitfire bedroom. All of the little accoutrements that we have up here just makes it a very special place to be. All the little things that have been contributed. And one of the things I treasure, I know it's hard to believe how this worked out. The Nats, being told right at the Nats on the Walker Fly-Off that I had been inducted into the AMA Hall of Fame. And Kent getting that picture right at that exact minute. There's a famous saying from one movie, and I don't even know what it was, that I will treasure it always. Anyway, of all the little things I do treasure, that's certainly one of them. And we hope we're going to see you on the next tape, and check out Scott's mufflers. They look like they're really nice. We're going to be getting our engines within the next week or two, maybe even getting some test flying. But for now, the next step is going to be setting that wing into the fuselage and doing the rest of the take-apart features. And that'll be starting on the next tape. Thanks for joining us. And there's always that point in time when the parts start to become a model, and in the last couple of weeks that's what's happened. And every morning I get up now, I'm just even more stoked to get this project moving along. We are really excited about having 2 bombers, possibly even sometime this summer. Now, I don't know how to even report this, but Bob Zambelli has the sweeper ready to fly. So maybe on the next video we're even going to see it fly. I don't know. He's supposed to be coming up here for a banquet, a circle burner banquet, and he's going to bring the sweeper with a new motor in it, ready to fly. And it's usually this time of year we just get overly excited about getting ready to go to Brodax, getting ready to go to Texas. Oh, there's just so many things in the world of model aviation, so many things to look forward to. And we're hoping we're even going to see Al Raby while we're down there in Texas. Maybe even videotape his the models that he has in his shop. And we got Jerry Rushke his Rojet 65 pipe for his Strega. And we really look forward to seeing if we're going to get some pictures of that pretty soon. I love this little Cardinal. Wow. Very, very nice little model. Jerry, that is an improvement. By the way, you can send that, put it in a box and send it to me anytime you want. And we're looking forward to seeing Mike Cooper's Strega is just about finished with the Rojet 65. Looking forward to seeing that. And we hope it won't be long before we'll be opening up our pond, cleaning up the yard. Boy, this has been a rough winter. But the nice thing about modeling, it saves you from bad weather, keeps you as sane as possible. And notice I don't say sane, as sane. And we are really looking forward to Brodax. Boy, this should be the best year ever. Every year we say that, because every year it just gets better and better. And we hope we'll see you on the next tape. Please share them with all your friends, and share all the things that we all seem to enjoy and want to share. And with the flying season coming up, this promises to really be a banner year. We really made some progress in the last, I don't know, 2 weeks or so. It's really starting to have that look. And we're really starting to get ready to put this wing in. It's a little late to be working on it now, but we've had a busy day. But what I do, just to make sure people understand, is why I don't start a project like this and then have it end. I hope it never ends in the middle of a tape or at the end of a tape, because this is the kind of thing most people that want to make a take-apart plane would like to have most of that information, or all of it, or as much of it as possible on one tape. And I think that's a real contribution then, instead of being just a, well, something that would be less valuable. Anyway, that'll be coming up on the next tape for sure. And we hope we'll see you on the next tape.